Citroën is finally in India. We are driving the India Spec C5 on Indian soil. So without further ado, let's quickly see how this car compares to the Euro Spec model we reviewed in 2019.
The variant I am driving is the base spec, but the one in the B-roll is the range topper, which gets the LED headlights, panoramic roof and a powered tailgate similar to the Euro Spec car. Either way, there isn't much that is different between these two cars when seen in a passing glance, meaning the India Spec car looks just as gorgeous as you expected it to be. My only worry is that the C5 Aircross is already about 4 years old, which means that it is nearing its midlife makeover. But as of now, this is the same design sold globally, and the India Spec model looks just as chic and sophisticated as you saw in the photos. Sadly, though customization is a big talking point for the brand, you can't really customize anything on the C5 Aircross for India. All of that is being said for Citroën's India-specific compact cars that start arriving in 2022. But there are enough colors and styles to choose from on the C5 Aircross, and it looks like nothing else on the road. Thankfully, it also doesn't look like it wants to bite your head off. In a sea of SUVs that are all about aggressive styles, the C5 Aircross comes across as a friendly crossover that will make all kinds of buyers smile. With its low height and wide doors, ingress and egress is quite easy too. And once inside, you will see that the boxy grid-like theme from the outside makes its way inside the cabin too. This is quite a unique design as well, and you will be happy to know that all the premium materials and the excellent fit and finish you see here is made and achieved in India. You have scratchy plastics on top of the dash, also on the door pads, but the common touch points like here on the handles or here on the dash, it's all soft touch materials and I quite like it. I also like the use of different textures that you get within the cabin, like for example this rubberized finish on the horn pad, or the denim finish or the leather finish that you have on the dashboard or the upholstery, and all that feels nice and premium. It feels a little different and I quite like it. These seats are what Citroën takes great pride in, as they claim to provide unparalleled comfort for the class. I would have liked slightly better under thigh and lower back support on the front seats. This feels a little inadequate to my liking, but I think the advantage also is that because you have a flatter seat, shorter drivers will have an easier time reaching the pedals, which I think is a very good thing. What I also like is that you have ISOFIX child seat mounts even on the front seat. It's something that I identified when I reviewed the European spec car, and I'm glad that they've brought it on the India spec model as well. Because if you're a parent who would like to have the child seat right next to you, you have that option to do that now in a safe way. Just make sure that if you do that, you turn off the front passenger airbag. Because of the unique padded design, the seats also don't incorporate a ventilation function. And speaking of safety, I would have loved to see the mirror-mounted dashboard camera on the India spec model and maybe have some ADAS features too. Despite their omission though, the safety kit covers all the basics you expect at this price point. The infotainment system isn't the most intuitive or feature-rich when it comes to comparing it to the competition, but it covers all the basics. So you get Apple CarPlay, you get Android Auto, you also have a nice sounding audio system, though the speakers aren't the branded type if you want that in this particular price category, but they sound quite nice. And to go nitpicking, well, there are very few charging options. You get one 12-volt socket there, one USB port at the front, one USB port at the rear. That's about it. So 5 occupants are not going to have their own charging socket each. Also, there's no wireless charging pad, which I think is a bit of a missed opportunity at this particular price point. And to go nitpicking further, well, the placement of the gear selector or the push button starter, it's for the left-hand drive version. They haven't really optimized it for the right-hand drive version. Not a big deal really, but when you are in a tight parking spot and you might have to go between the forward and the reverse gears often, that is when you start feeling that this is quite a bit of a reach. Like I said, it's not a deal breaker, it's not something big, it's something that you need to get used to.
And continuing on the nitpicking aspect, well, you have a reversing camera, but the display, it clearly shows you that there's something missing. There is a blank spot, and that is because on the Eurospec model I showed you that there was a front-facing camera and a rear-facing camera, and that in a way created a 360-degree view. Not the most optimized 360-degree views out there, but at least you had that view, you had that option. In this, you don't get it. You only get the reversing camera, and then you see this blank spot on the screen, which I don't quite like at this particular price point. What I also don't like is the feel of the paddle shifters, something that I again pointed out on the Eurospec model, but guess we have to live with that. What I do like, however, is this little click that you get for the controls on the stock. I think that feels quite nice. It's also got a very subtle chrome ring, and it feels premium.
Connected tech has been given a miss too, and while some of you might argue that it should have been included at this price point, I honestly think it doesn't matter much at this point in time. But do let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.
The other big talking point is, of course, the versatility of the seats. You can adjust these seats for reach individually, all three of them. It's a bit hard, but yeah, you can get this done. Now, the only downside to this is because of this arrangement, you don't get a center armrest. But what I do like is the overall cushioning of the seats. It's a bit soft on the sides, but the support for your butt or your back is nice and firm. So long distance comfort shouldn't be a problem at all. In fact, I think this is going to be comfortable over the long distances, at least the front seats are. In fact, like I said, the support for the back and the butt is better than what you have in the front seats. You get your own AC vents, you get a USB charger, as I pointed out earlier. What you don't get on the base model is a panoramic sunroof, or any sunroof for that matter. And in terms of the headroom, I quite like it, but if you're a taller passenger, you might find this shape of the roof to be a bit intrusive. You might have to sit with your neck a bit bent. If you are a tall passenger and if you find this uncomfortable, do let us know in the comment section below. In terms of the space, this is the kind of knee room that I get with the driver's seat set to my preference. This is the kind of foot space that I get, so overall comfort is not that bad. The C5 is nice and wide, so having 3 adults at the back is not a problem at all. However, if you are generously sized, if you're not average sized, like generously sized as I am, you might find the width to be a bit cramped. So if you're going to be driven around, you might want to look elsewhere. Look at the Citroën C5 Aircross as a comfortable daily driver or highway cruiser for the family, and you will love the comfort, versatility and the boot space that it has to offer. The start button takes a firm push, and this engine comes to life quite silently, but there are quite a bit of judders that you feel at startup. It immediately smoothens out. And this is a different engine than what we sampled in Europe. The one that we drove in Europe was the 1.6 petrol. This is a 2-liter diesel. So it's a diesel that has finally come to the Indian market. That's the only option at the moment. You can only have it with an automatic gearbox. Now, in terms of the specs, it is right up there with the diesel engine that you get from Fiat in the Jeep. It's also right up there with the diesel engine that you get from Hyundai in the Tucson. In terms of the power, in terms of the torque, it is comparable to that. But in terms of its eagerness, in terms of the way it delivers that performance, it is sprightlier than any other 2-liter diesel engine that we've sampled in this space or anything around it. In fact, 0 to 100 came up in about 9.6 seconds, and that was even with the wheel spinning. And that was the most consistent time we got, but with the perfect launches, it was even quicker, which is a big deal. Of course, outright acceleration doesn't say everything about the engine, but this engine is quite eager. It doesn't feel like a typical turbocharged diesel engine where you get this surge of power and torque after the turbocharging kicks in. This one is nice and linear, and with the kind of noise insulation that Citroën has managed even for the India spec model, where you have the double glazing for the windows, you have additional insulation in the firewall, there is hardly any diesel clatter that you hear inside the cabin. There's a bit of it on the outside, but hardly anything that you hear inside the cabin. It doesn't feel like a diesel at all. And that is what you will love about this, because most of the diesel engines in this particular category don't feel as refined, don't feel as muted. This one does, and that contributes further to that premium feel that this cabin has to offer you. The engine is mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox. As I mentioned, it's an Aisin gearbox. We've loved it in the past. We have sampled this gearbox on some of the other premium cars, and it impresses in this car as well.
it's a little bit slow to upshift, but it's quick to downshift. And if you put it in sport mode, well, the gearbox, the engine responses are all the more sharper. It is noticeably sharper as compared to the eco mode, and you will just enjoy this car quite a bit. However, if you are driving around the twisties, that is where there is a bit of a problem, because while the torque, while the power isn't overwhelming in any way, while you don't feel that surge in any way, you know that this is a fairly powerful, a fairly torquey diesel engine with the kind of torque steer that you get with this particular motor. It is a front wheel driven configuration. You do not get all wheel drive, and that front wheel drive configuration makes itself evident if you are a little too early or if you are a little too eager on the throttle pedal. What you'll also like is the way Citroën has managed to tune the steering on this car. It's not overly weighted, it's not too light, it feels quite precise, and at the same time it feels nice and light, it feels conveniently light. So whether you're driving in the city, driving around twisties the way I am right now, you will enjoy your time with the steering wheel. It's not the most communicative, but at the same time, like I said, it is quite precise, and that is what I like. Now the big talking point for the Citroën C5 is of course the ride quality. We talked about it with the Eurospec model as well, and I was really intrigued to find out how it behaves on the Indian road conditions. And well, the good news is that phenomenal ride quality continues with the India spec model as well. I've said this before, the benchmark to beat has been the Jeep Compass, and that in my books is still the benchmark in terms of the balance that it achieves between ride and handling. This one, however, purely in terms of the ride quality, is easily the best in the segment. Whether you're driving over rumble strips, whether you're driving over poor sections of the road, or even tackling potholes, it does everything quite nicely, and you will enjoy that ride quality quite a bit. In terms of the handling, however, there is a bit of vertical movement, especially if you are driving around tight turns, tight switchbacks. You will feel there is a bit of roll from side to side. However, it's quite controlled. It is something that is predictable. It's not something that is unnerving. It's not something that will catch you off guard or, just make you feel scared of driving it on twisty roads. It's not anything like that. It's quite well controlled, just that it's not as taut as something like a Jeep Compass. But in terms of its driving dynamics, I think it is better than the Hyundai Tucson. Now, you don't get all-wheel drive. However, like most new age cars, you get a fancy ESP or traction control system which gives you different terrain modes to choose from. So if you were to drive off the beaten path, maybe going to your farmhouse, maybe just taking a mild trail here and there, it should be able to do it just fine. Of course, we haven't subjected this car to anything a little bit more tricky, a little bit more slippery, like maybe slippery rocks or slush. And I'm not sure if it will be able to handle that with the kind of road tires it comes with. But for basic stuff, it's quite well equipped. Now, when I drove the Eurospec model, I had complained about the throttle pedal a little bit. I said it's a bit too light, you have to be measured with it, and it needs getting used to. This one, however, feels quite natural, so they've got the modulation right. In terms of the brake pedal feel, however, it's a bit too bitey. It's quite light on its initial motion, and then it just bites pretty hard on those brakes. And that's a little difficult to get used to, especially if you're driving in bumper to bumper traffic. It just gets a bit too bitey, and that's not something that I like. I would have liked this to be a bit more progressive. Okay, I promise. One last reference I'll make to the review of the Eurospec model. When I did that, I had said that I would like the pricing to be in the sub-Compass bracket. That's not happening. The C5 is coming in that very bracket. It is more expensive than what we expected. But at that price tag, does it make sense or not? Well, depends on how you look at it. If you want something that is roomy for that particular price tag, I think you're better off with something like the Tucson. If you want something that is dynamic, that is a little more capable off the road, and you want something that gives you that go anywhere capability, or at least give the perception of having the go anywhere capability, you're better off with the Jeep Compass. But if you want an easy daily driver, if you want a car that is much easier to drive than what its size might suggest, is a Citroën C5. If you want a car that is absolutely comfortable in terms of its ride quality, in terms of its seating, Well, it's again the Citroën C5 Aircross. So that is what is going for the car. That is what makes this car stand out. The design, of course, is one thing that we have to make a mention to. I'll not say that this is the best looking car of the lot, because I have heard different statements, different points of view from many people that I've been speaking to about this particular car. So people are sort of polarized with this design. But to say the least, to take that diplomatic approach, let me say that it looks unconventional. So if you want something that looks different, if you want something that looks unique, that looks like nothing else on the road right now, well, again, the Citroën C5 Aircross is your car. So those are the different scenarios. If either of these is what you're looking for, or if all of these is what you're looking for, I think this car makes a strong case for itself. Of course, this is not the product that Citroën is really betting big on for the Indian market. In a way, what they are showing you with this product is what they can achieve, the kind of ride quality that they can provide, the kind of equipment that they can bring to the table, the kind of build quality that they can manage even while localizing everything in India. And I think it's a very good proof of what they can manage, because what I see, what I drive is something that I like. Now, what is going to be the big ticket product for Citroën is, of course, the second product that is coming from the brand, which is a compact crossover. They're calling it the C Cubed. Now, I don't know if it's a take on the C3. I don't know if it's got anything to do with the next generation C3, if that is going to be the name, or are they going to go with a completely different name. But that product is what they are really betting big on. And with this product, they're essentially setting the brand, giving you an example of what to expect from this brand. And I think everything that we can see from this brand so far looks promising.